Hello and welcome to this mini exercise in terms of how to do expressive drawings and then be able to develop them into paintings. I'm Joe Webster. I'm an award-winning international plein air artist known for my landscape graffiti paintings. And I firmly believe that but by painting, studying, celebrating the beauty in the natural world, it brings us well-being and nurtures our care and respect for the planet. This is the type of drawing that I'm going to do with you today. Okay, so fast, expressive drawings. I love doing this exercise outdoors, but equally what I've done today is I've gone out and I've picked a few different plants and flowers from the garden. I'm going to sit and draw this. And what you will need for this exercise, the drawing bit, simply just a piece of paper or a sketchbook, pencil, and a piece of rough paper. Could be out of recycling or something like that. Optional extras could be a biro or Sharpies or things like that, but all you really need is 2 bits of paper and a pencil for the first half. The second half of this exercise, which I'm going to try and I normally quite like to pace things and teach quite slowly and sort of help people as they go along. But I'm going to try and talk quite quickly and make this a bit snappy today. So by all means pause this as you go along. You don't need this equipment now, but while I'm introducing it. You'll need paint or ink and a brush essentially, and just a recycling tub like this, plastic pot to wash your brush in. Optional extras could be a few more tubs, some watercolour pencils, and I've got like a mister or sprayer from the greenhouse. Right, so before we even start doing any of the artwork, the most important thing that every time I do a drawing or painting, have to kind of try and remind myself of, what I hope you get out of this more than any art skill, is actually fun, enjoyment and relaxation. So we've all heard about kind of like your left brain, right brain, your kind of logical, critical brain, and your sort of emotional feeling brain. The whole point of this exercise, the focus, is to try to get your logical, day-to-day, timekeeping, critical brain and get it as far out of the room as possible. Okay, and it requires practice and skill to be able to do that. But the more that you keep that as your main focus in this exercise and try to get your thinking brain out of the way, the more relaxation and fun you'll have. 9 times out of 10, the better drawing that you'll create, and certainly when you look at it at the end, you'll be less critical of yourself and the results of your work. I'm not going to pretend for a second that there is kind of like a magic solution and you're suddenly a Picasso overnight. So like any skill, whether it's riding a bike or becoming a nuclear physicist, every skill, art being the same, requires practice and time and keep returning to it and refining your skill. That being said, this activity, and particularly this style of drawing, is something I return to. It's this drawing that I've been doing in this painting here. I return to it every time I do a painting. So this isn't a throwaway exercise. This is something that's a core skill that I'd say, if you enjoy it and you feel relaxed at the end of it, keep doing this. Every time you want a bit of relaxation, you've got a bit of spare time, keep practicing it and you will get better. Okay, I want to throw this idea out of the window that so many people, when I talk to about art, there's a really, really deep-seated belief kind of in our society where you either have it or you don't. You either can draw or you can't draw. I'm not going to deny that, as with everything, people have a sort of a natural aptitude towards certain things. Some people are good artists from a young age. But if those good artists don't keep practicing, the skill gets sort of watered down or forgotten. Whereas somebody who can't, who I hear all the time, I can only draw a stick man. If you keep practicing, largely because you enjoy it, if you enjoy it and you keep doing this, you will get better. But you've got to get your thinking critical brain out of the way in order to let yourself have the opportunity to progress and to get better. Okay, so the purpose of this drawing, the focus of what you're trying to do, is to not look at the paper. The second you start looking at your drawing, you start going, oh, that's right, that's wrong, and you start being critical of your efforts. So don't look at your drawing. What your eyes need to be doing, and all of your strong sort of focus and attention and intention needs to be looking at how beautiful whatever you've chosen. Pick something. It could be a bowl of fruit, it could be a portrait of somebody, you could be out on a walk in nature. Find something that you find just sublimely beautiful. I think these flowers are absolutely gorgeous. Okay, and you're going to spend some time studying all of the beautiful little folds and shapes and edges within whatever you've chosen. So pick something that you love looking at, and the whole point of your focus, forget this, and all of your energy needs to be going into just looking and studying and studying and studying, and just the enjoyment of looking at something beautiful. Okay. To start you off on this activity, we're going to do a little bit of a kind of like a fun sort of way. This piece of paper here is primarily to design so that it stops you looking. You can't see your picture because I punched the hole through your scrap piece of paper. Okay. Once you get used to this, and I'll show you an example in a minute, you don't need this piece of paper here, but this is because the temptation to look is always there, and then you start getting critical of your efforts. The paper here will stop you looking. So put all of your energy into looking at this beautiful thing in front of you and studying all of the shapes. And as your eye follows the outline of whatever you're looking at it, if your eye is doing this, your hand is just trying to copy the movement that your eye takes around or through the object itself. And I quite like the description of your hand as being a little bit like a dancer, or being like a conductor or something like that. If you're drawing something that's fast moving, if you're doing something that's sort of sharp and jagged like the leaves, or possibly if you're doing something that's gentle and soft, think about the speed, maybe the pressure, the movement. So you've got expressiveness. This is your feeling sort of side, if you like. You get really expressive with your hand, and you've got all of your critical kind of your strong intention focused on the path, the journey that your eyes are taking. Okay, and within art, I always think, like any exercise, it's really good to do a warm-up. So it's particularly good if you're up for the challenge to time yourself 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to do a quick drawing, and then turn over another minute, do another drawing, and to do 10 pieces, very, very fast, maybe minute pieces as a warm-up. Okay, I'm not going to put a timer on here, but I'm going to have the intention of trying to go quickly so that I stop worrying about each mark. Okay, so there's enough talking, let's have a go. So notice when I teach this to my students in school, notice what my eyes are doing. My focus is entirely on looking at all of the different shapes, the outlines, all of the beautiful little detail, and the things that maybe, like when you first picked this in the garden, you didn't maybe notice some of these things, and kind of like, actually, oh wow, look at that little shape there, and how those two things combine. And I'm going to go soft and gentle for this bit for the flower, because it's so much more delicate than the leaves in terms of the rounded shapes and stuff. To just kind of move over as my eye follows the lines and the edges. shapes, the textures, the details. My hand is just following the movement of my eye, expressing the qualities of what my eye is experiencing. Little tip within this, if you kind of want to remember where you're going, you can kind of put fingers on the paper as kind of almost like as reminders to sort of go like, I put that leaf there, there's a reminder, I put that flower here, there's a reminder, and then you can kind of move your pencil back to find it. Okay, fantastic. There's my drawing, I didn't time that. Fast expressive drawing. Now, what I would recommend, and I'm going to say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, is actually, with your drawing, tear it out of your book, okay? I would say don't even look at your drawing. Flip it over, do another one. Flip it over. Don't start to evaluate whether you've done a good job or a bad job, because that actually is letting your critical brain back in, and it's reducing the joy. I would almost recommend, if this is the drawing that you've done, this is what you should do with it, okay? Because the point being, not that it's a bad drawing, the point being that focus on actually how did you feel as you were doing that, disregard the outcome and focus on the energy and the enjoyment of the present moment of being within this. If you don't want to throw things away, and most people don't, I remember asking a student to do this once and really upset her. Flip the page over, turn it over, come back to it in a day or two when the actual emotion of the creative act has subsided, and then look at it with fresh eyes a day later and see whether you like what you've created. I typically within a drawing think the first 2 or 3 pieces won't be particularly good at all, and you need to warm up, and maybe number 7 or maybe number 8 or something might have something that's interesting or beautiful within it. The reason I've got pens and stuff is because you can do, I'll do a very, very quick one, a couple of things here. You don't have to do this with, in fact, let's do a different flower. You don't have to do this with pencil necessarily. And pen is quite interesting because it commits you to, pen kind of you can't rub things out when it's pen, you know. So notice I've got rid of the paper. This is kind of the advanced thing that you can move up to, but look, watch my eyes. I'm very, very deliberately you're consuming the flower, if you like, or whatever you're drawing. You kind of, the focus is to get as much information and just study it, all the beautiful, intricate little details, digest it, kind of soak it in, enjoy the process. If the time limit of this, the time limit is designed to keep you sort of moving and unfrozen, but if the time limit causes stress for you, get rid of it. You notice I haven't got a stopwatch going or anything like that here. I'm trying to sort of work quickly with sort of expressive energy, but if you're the person who wants to to do things a little bit slowly and relax, that's perfectly fine. Make sure it's an enjoyable sort of exercise for yourself. There you go. And here's an example of kind of how these pieces could look. Okay, but remember, this doesn't matter. How are you feeling? Just giving yourself a bit of time to kind of really look at how beautiful the world is and let go. So here's an extra brief little clip just to support you with that last drawing exercise. I've just taken the flower. By the way, if you if you're drawing like me and you put whatever your subject matter is on a white piece of paper, it helps you kind of see it a little bit better. It'll get lost in some of the wood effect. I've put the flower on the table and I've put a bit of Perspex on top, and I'm just going to draw on it with a dry white marker. This isn't part of the exercise at all. I'm just going to do this to to try to kind of to support the last activity and give you a little bit more of an idea, to try to describe what is going on in my head as I do the drawing, so that I'm going to sort of try to draw into the screen here actually as I go. So I'm starting along and I'm going, and can you see there's like a little like nick there, so it's kind of like a little sort of nick in the end of that bud, and I'm sort of following it along like this. But you don't need to do, I'll come back there in a second, you don't need to do an outline like this. You don't have to just go around the inside. If you're drawing along and suddenly you find something interesting sort of in the inside here, one way that this can be described is kind of taking your pen or pencil for a walk, and that's essentially what you're doing. So I'm walking up here, I'm going, do you know what, I am going to go on the outside, and then there's a beautiful little bump there. Let's just actually get a better pen, because you can't really, I mean, you can sort of see, that's better. Okay, so a little bump there, and kind of look at this kind of like a little fold sort of on the inside of that there. Tiny little lump, and then a big one. But actually there's a second petal there that I think I quite like to sort of just to double back and go on the inside. And actually I'm going to focus on that inner shape there, and look at these beautiful, are they stamens? I'm just going to follow that sort of like that little jig-jag, it's quite a good word, isn't it? Sort of on the middle, and then actually, look at those beautiful stamens out, they're really delicate. If I had a pencil, I'd be doing these like really, really gently and soft, and then sort of carry on my journey. Or I'm going to carry on the outside, but actually I might just come back. I quite like that little triangle sort of in the inside of those ones there, and I'm just going to speed up a little bit for some of this because you're starting to get the idea. So kind of stop talking for a second. You can kind of sort of see how sort of essentially what my mind is doing. So this is kind of like my pen is following the path of my eye. Now look at the beautiful sort of like the quality of that little waver there around the edge, and then that little very subtle little bump there kind of on the side of that other petal. These kind of beautiful little details, if you kind of really sort of relax and go, there, can really kind of start really studying what you're looking at, and kind of maybe even the sort of that variety of colour there might sort of appeal to you. Do you know what? I'm not actually even going to do that. I'm just going to leave a bit of a gap. Maybe just kind of do these but don't line them up, and I think I might leave them like that. So you don't have to draw every single thing. You can leave gaps. You can just go off on one. I've left all of the outside there, for example, and just follow the path of your eye in terms of what interests you. You're not trying to draw everything. You're just trying to follow what. I'm trying to do this so you can actually see the drawing without the flower. You get a bit of an idea there. So there's kind of like this, and the gaps can make beautiful sort of qualities in the way that these things don't necessarily line up and stuff like that. So there's just the bits of detail that you find really beautiful, and rather than trying to do everything exactly as it is. Okay, so we've got the drawing technique. Now, please rewind back to the start and remember, go easy on yourself. This is why I'm suggesting don't worry about the final outcome. Focus on the process and the enjoyment of spending the time and just looking and relaxing. So you could do that to them. You could flip them over, not look at them. But in my 20 years of teaching, I think it's about 1 or 2% of students actually are proud of or enjoy their final drawing. Every artist that I've ever met will look at this and see the quality and the beauty in the expressiveness of these marks. Every student, I'm sort of thinking teenagers particularly, who I've taught a lot of, very, very rarely actually see the value and quality of this, which is why I'm suggesting leaving it for a few days and then coming back to it. The key being that this is an expressive drawing, it's not an accurate drawing, and when people are learning to draw, They want to get every single detail and shape and everything right. And there are loads and loads of techniques to do that. And if you enjoy watching this brief tutorial, then by all means follow my work. And I do teach all of the more rigorous techniques. But they require greater practice and a bit longer introduction than we have here. So we're going to move on to the painting techniques. If you were using ink, and in a sense the same as paint, it comes out as a pretty strong colour. So what I'm actually going to suggest we could do with the paint is pour out quite a lot of water, and then we'll dilute the paint or the ink. So it's actually, we'll start off with a bit more of a gentler colour. So a really simple, quite obvious thing that you can do is then to sort of paint into your drawings, particularly if you've used the pen, but it works really well with sort of pencil drawings. You're not necessarily colouring in, doesn't matter if you go in or outside the lines and stuff like that, but you can add some sort of colour and expressive stuff to your picture like that. You could go even bolder and on this drawing kind of just do something like this over the top, you know, like it doesn't have to, it's not, the colour and the line don't have to match up at all. So there's one easy step to sort of start to introduce colour and paint into this. Now this is a super magical effect. I'm just going to show you lots and lots of fast, sort of easy, expressive techniques of things that you can do with colour to sort of to add an extra dimension to this. Assuming that you've still got wet areas and it hasn't dried, if you spray this onto wet paint or ink, the wet elements will start to kind of, the watery diluted elements will run into the little drips that you've created. You get these beautiful kind of like little sort of spider trails, if you like, or something like that. And I've got some water soluble coloured pencils. I don't have an orange, so blue. And because there's a wet surface, you could be drawing this, you could just kind of create some interesting lines and sort of shapes within this. Now, you know, that colour some bits in. Or you could go back and sort of carry on drawing extra elements of your subject matter. Because this is where I'm not going to hold this up to the camera, but I might sort of do a screenshot of it at the end if you're interested in what I've actually created here. Water-soluble pencils are great for this because the colour, the pigment within the pencil obviously dissolves within the water on the surface of the picture. You get these sort of beautiful techniques and effects and stuff like that. And then if you want to keep it, you can add more sort of paint in. If you've got a wet brush, you can actually then, water-soluble pencils, you can actually kind of pull the colour of the pencil out and kind of keep moving that colour around. I've honestly just noticed that I'm wearing an orange jumper. I've picked orange flowers and I'm using orange ink. That was actually pure coincidence today, but I thought it was quite funny. My final little exercise or suggestion of what you can do with this today is I've just taken my sketchbook outside and I've just splashed a load of ink over the paper. And the great thing about, I love splashing paint, which you can see in many of my paintings. The great thing about this is that it breaks up the what is potentially sort of the scary white paper, and there's chaos and freedom going on top of it. So it doesn't really matter, if you like, where you go with this. You've got this sort of unpredictable element going on that you can then sort of dip in and out of and shape a little bit, but
it stops it being so sort of tight and held. I wouldn't necessarily suggest this for this, but just so that you can see a close-up of what happens when you spray into these pieces. And the trick, if you do this, you see that drip move there with it. The trick when you do this is the second you see pieces starting to go like they are there, they're running into these pieces here. Stop then. If you get the paper totally wet, you'll get what we call a wash, where the whole thing will just blend into this sort of very, very sort of gentle sort of sea, but which is also beautiful. But this effect is particularly good where you've got little drips with dry bits around, which is why the colour sort of goes on these funny little journeys. So the final bit today is you could work into a splash, you could spray, something like that, and then going full circle, I'm looking at the flower up here. In fact, I'm going to use this flower, I think. And this could just be a pencil. I'm using a water-soluble pencil, but it could just be a straight pencil, and you go straight back to, where was it? Straight back to your original drawing technique, and you could start doing your expressive drawing, but this time into a coloured surface. I mean, you could just do the whole thing a single colour, you could do any sort of painting, but I'm essentially going back, and my eye is watching this, my hand is just following the whatever my eye is fascinated in or interested in. And as a kind of like a final sort of step in this thing, by all means sort of construct your picture. Like if that wasn't going to look very good there, and suddenly you want to take this flower and draw that flower down here, and this flower, and you put this flower here or here or here, you can start to just take elements of what you like and put them where you want to. So remember, we're not going for accuracy, we're creating something that is kind of like a pleasing final piece here within this one. So you're building on those expressive things, you're trying to kind of keep things a little bit loose and free and leave gaps, don't have to join everything up, it doesn't all have to be, I can actually pick up this and you can take things for a bit of you see how you can kind of trace that out for a journey. I don't know where I'm going with this, maybe that will turn into that flower. So it's all building on those expressive things that we started to introduce at the start, but now we've got colour in there. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do a bit of this, I think. That's not come from anything that I'm looking at, but just wanted to somehow to pull something back down into the corner. There's a lot of things. If you know what is meant by composition, this is where sort of like compositional skills come in. By all means, go away and research that or follow some of my other videos, and once you start to understand composition, then you'll understand why I put a little bit more there, or why I've balanced it with a bit there or something. So there you go, a splatter, and doing a line drawing into the centre. This was the one that I said I'd show you to the camera. It's a little bit drier now. That was the line drawing first, and then sort of painting into with a little bit of spray and stuff. You can use multiple colours, but if you use colours, try to use things that are kind of either sympathetic or complementary. So orange will obviously go really well with sort of like a red or a yellow. So it's next to it on the colour wheel. If you were to use something opposite, a complementary colour with orange, such as blue particularly, I would suggest waiting for this to totally dry and then use like a bright blue colour over the top or something, maybe with paint. And then the colours don't mix together, or if you do them when they're wet, be aware that two colours opposite each other on the colour wheel will sort of make muddy browns. Anyway, that's a different lesson for another day. Hope you really enjoyed this. It's always lovely to receive feedback and suggestions, so please feel free to email me any of the drawings that you did from this, or any thoughts or feedback in terms of how you've found it, whether you've enjoyed it, whether you've struggled with it, whether you'd like me to do something, show you something extra or go into more detail. Warm wishes all, love, lots of love.